Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone's keeping well this winter season.
Hello everybody, Matt Guy here. Shorts on, but regretting it.
Yeah, I've got a whole week without shorts. It dipped below 8, which was kind of my threshold, especially when it was kind of drizzly and pissing down. It was just unpleasant. So I thought, well, shorts till November is the rule, as we all know, and it is very much November. So I have bowed down, and they have not been slipped onto me at any point this week. But it's jingle all the 3 lines, eh? That's the main thing. So
it is very much. Even I've put like Christmas stuff up this weekend, which is, as you pair note, is not like me. So yeah, I've got into the swing of things early doors.
The issue is I only own one pair of joggers, and they're like Primark cheap painting joggers that have got like white emulsion all over them. And if I need,
you say it's white emulsion, but
it's white emulsion. And if I will need to put something on my legs that cover past my knees, it's just my only option is jeans, because I don't really own pajamas either. And once you've had a shower of an evening, if you're going to have an evening shower, you don't then put jeans on afterwards. That's the rule, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no jeans in the house. Like it's wrong.
Because we're in the season now where I would rather shower the night before and then just have a face and bits wash in the morning, because it's too cold to get out the shower of the morning now before work. But then I'll shower that evening. So I'm still getting my once a day shower. It's just at different times. That's fair, isn't it?
I think that's bob on, to be honest, mate. Yeah.
Have you not got any like long johns or stuff?
No, Stu. I haven't picked mine up from
the wool ration shop.
Yeah, no, I don't. No, long johns are not in my vocabulary.
Because I have done that before. I've put long johns on and then put shorts over the top, just so you don't see any ridles, in case someone knocks at the door. You don't want people that in. But if Alisson can wear it on pitch and be perfectly fine now, the keeper's wearing leggings and tights, and poor old Gabor Kiro years ago getting harassed for wearing his grey joggers. He'd be lauded as a king now. So you got this this grey jogger fetish that these birds are putting on Twitter all the time.
Well, I was just about to say that. Like, if TikTok has anything to go by, if I get myself a pair of grey sweatpants, I'm going to be battering them away with a shitty stick. So maybe
they do. I've got one pair, okay, and that was to wear with green, obviously, because it kind of works. And they do stare. It's quite enlightening, really, because obviously you have to buy them like really tight as well, so that you bunched up. But even just going to one, I saw a woman in one stop in a full on onesie and slippers yesterday, and this was like 6 PM. It wasn't night time, and like, well, you've clearly come out, and it had like one of them dragon ones with the spikes on the top.
Yeah, God.
A little tail. But yeah, so you wear them grey joggers, you get the eyeballs. Definitely works.
Wow, there we go. Is that part of for obviously no one can see this, but do you have a grey hoodie on? Is that part of a grey sweatpant ensemble, Andy? You're wearing at the minute?
No, I have got some joggers on, but they're navy-ish.
Oh, okay.
That you can just about see on the camera, but no, this is just a Primark Nickelodeon hoodie.
I like it.
Nothing that fancy, I'm afraid, here.
But
you were wearing a hat inside.
Wear a hat 24/7 at this point of the year.
That's true. But Andy, why are we here today? Segue us in.
Yeah, we are here after all this random sort of couture / sporting conversation. Because, I mean, we're a pop culture podcast, and what is more pop culture at the moment than the World Cup? I mean,
not of Quidditch.
Well, yes, that's it, yeah. So, yeah, because it's sporty, and we're having to do a top 5 episode this week, we thought we would do a sporty top 5. But the World Cup, gents, it's the biggest sporting event every 4 years. Would you say it's bigger than the Olympics?
Yes, but then is that because commercially it's bigger in terms of like the Olympics probably has one sponsor or something. Like it's nowhere near to the same grand stage, so I don't think we see the Olympics in every walk of life. Like Aldi and every other supermarket I don't think has an Olympic advert, but they'll have something about the World Cup. You know what I mean? I think it's a bigger commercial enterprise, so that's why we see much more about it. I saw some statistics about the eyes on the World Cup and then the eyes on the Super Bowl, and that shocked me. Like I didn't realise the World Cup was as big. Like I thought it might be, the Super Bowl might, just because of the sheer size of it globally now, because American football is very much over on these shores as well. That there was no comparison.
It's the problem with it. It's still only really 3, maybe 4 countries where you got here, Germany, maybe a little bit of Spain as well. No one else cares, so that's automatically your problem. And then obviously with the time and how long the Super Bowl goes on for, and it's one event compared to 100 and I can't remember. Someone they did mention it earlier how many games there was altogether, but I can't be bothered to work it out. But the Olympics is like kind of the hipster's choice of sporting events at this point. I mean, football wasn't around when the Olympics was invented, and that's the reason it exists, because there was no football, and football is better than people running around and jumping in sandpits. It just is. So it's more it's more commercially viable, but for a reason that more people care. And that's not just been football, and you it already has started where the people who kind of pretend to know what they're talking about once every 4 years come out and start talking about Mbappe. So I didn't pronounce this morning in the pub. World Cup's massive, and World Cup fever is very much upon me, especially. And obviously, I'll put it on Twitter earlier today that obviously it's bad and everything that happened over there. It shouldn't be there. It's stupid. It ruins the Christmas decorations, having flags up. But everyone moaning about it. I mean, the BBC coverage today was a joke. It was a joke. They didn't. I mean, if you didn't know that when was the last time an opening ceremony of a sporting event was not shown at all? It's never happened.
I don't think it's ever happened. Obviously, I think they did it today. Obviously, because of FIFA basically putting a stop to, as they like to put it, political talk. It's not political talk, it's talk about human rights. And BBC felt that they needed to highlight the human rights nature of the issues with going to Qatar rather than be part of this masquerade of whatever the shower of shit it was that they were putting on for an hour before the match kicked off.
Well, it was over an hour. I mean, the fact that it started at 2:00, I looked all morning to try and find if it was being shown anywhere. Other than resorting to watching beIN Sports, which was obviously the last resort of anyone. It was only about when I just went on iPlayer just to look if it was in 4K that the option was there. And they had it all completely shown. It wasn't just one camera in the corner. It was properly televised as it would be normally. And they didn't even mention it. And you think, well, you've had months and years talking about the bollocks of it all. We all know how bad it is. We all know how many people have died there. And it's like, if this is going to be what it's like every day, then I'm just going to want to bother. I'll just turn in 5 minutes before the game. Whereas normally I'd soak up everything about it. And they're going to be careful because it's on that kind of precipice. Because you look at the reaction of people on Twitter. I know it's, whatever. But it's going to piss people off if they keep going on and on and on about it. We can't do anything about it now. I mean, the people moaning about it on telly, they're still there. They're still being paid. And like and you're looking at the England squad and the One Love thing. I mean, obviously we'll know later on today if that actually gets worn or not. But you're selling 120 quid replica shirts, knocked out for a fiver by some kids in Bangladesh, and then you're preaching about human rights issues. It's just a load of bollocks. The whole world's bent and corrupt. We all know that. You've made your peace. Take the knee. Do things properly. If you want to watch it, watch it. If you don't want to watch it, that's fine. But they've got to tread a very thin line now with this. If they're doing this every single day, which I hope today I kind of understand, and if they'd said that this is an option, then fine. But that's what you want, an option. They talked about the game for 10 minutes. I mean, they could have talked about the game for 2 minutes, really, how bad it was.
Yeah.
But normally you'd have the whole build-up, and there was none today. And it just really annoyed me.
Matt, how are you feeling about this tournament in particular? How has World Cup fever grabbed you yet?
It was difficult because, like, let's say this wasn't in Qatar and it was another minnow that was playing. So let's say it was San Marino versus Ecuador. I'd still feel the same lackluster-ness about that game because it's not the game that you want to start a World Cup with. Do you know what I mean? Even having the Senegal Holland game as the first game would have been better, just because of it being more of a spectacle, I guess. But as it got closer to kickoff, I was thinking, oh well, I'll make sure I'm in, I'll make sure I'm ready, I'll make sure everything is on this and that. So it's difficult. I mean, with the human rights stuff, I don't remember this fury about when it was in Russia, and it's a difficult one because. Yeah, this is clearly an example of sports washing, as is the WWE stuff in Saudi Arabia, and it's clearly, it's a thing. Like, everybody knows it's a thing, but like, there's very little that Joe Blogs from their armchair can do about it at this point now. And I think people have probably had, like, very few people have consumed nothing about the World Cup until today's game. So people already know the issues well ahead of time. But there will be some people that are blind to all of this kind of stuff. There are a lot of casual people that won't know any of the information until they've seen today's game. So I've not got an issue with them talking about it for today's game. But if it's continued through the whole tournament and making it a thing for the entirety of the tournament, then it's, this festival of football isn't going to feel like that. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that it's been discussed today, because a lot of casual people who don't watch football at all year but will tune in for this because it's the biggest sporting event in the world should be told, and people should know about how poorly this competition's been put together and the sacrifices and deaths that people have had and stuff. I don't think it's bad that they've mentioned it, but I think you've got to be realistic about the reason why people are tuning in the first place, and it's not to be, like my list of things today. Sport is there to be an escape, not a continuation of, like, the misery that you face in your own life.
Yep.
Absolutely. The thing about today, the performances and stuff actually ended round about 3:10, so they could have come on at 2:30, showed the ceremony, and then spent 40 minutes, half hour, 40 minutes talking about exactly what's happened. If you automatically get people through the door because you got an opening ceremony, they're not going to turn off because they know the game's coming on. It just seems like a missed opportunity and it was neither one thing or the other.
How upset can you be about missing an opening ceremony, though? I mean, let's be
Footix was there.
Oh, come on now. Like,
If I'd have missed Footix, I'd have been really, really mad because I love Footix.
Go to Warsaw Illuminations, get your fill of that, and
yeah, absolutely. I would say, if anyone isn't aware of the shit show that's been going on for, was it 12 years since it was announced, Tifo Football have done a fantastic video series on YouTube. That's TIFO Football. There's 5 episodes, 15 to 20 minutes. It really dives into what happened at the beginning right up until today, and it talks about anything and everything to do with the whole thing. So I'd recommend people to go and give that a watch if you're interested in learning a bit more.
And Roz's video as well.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
Just Ross Atkins, just go and find him.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It's worth checking out if you don't know and you want to know more. Or even if you do know and you just want a deeper dive, it's there for you to find out. But in regards to today's episode, we're going to do a top 5 on our favourite sporting films. The only rule here is that you cannot use the same sport twice. So we'll go around the table. We'll go 5 to 2 honourable mentions, and then we shall give our number ones. I shall go first, and we are starting off in the boxing ring with Rocky 3. Now, Rocky 1 was the film that was, Oscar nominated and it was loved by the masses. And Rocky 5 was the exact opposite. It was fucking despised because it was absolute dog shit. Rocky 3 for me is the perfect film. It sits in the middle of the quintilogy. Yeah, quintilogy, I suppose, is the term for it. I've not seen the sixth one, so I'm discounting that. I'm just looking at the first 5. And it marries the perfect bit of silly bollocks and actual good sporting visuals on there. It gives you a bit of everything. You get the both ends of the spectrum. It's not so bad it's good because it's not a bad film, but it does certainly have a whiff of that genre of movie about it. You've got the silliness of Mr. T, who, to all intents and purposes, to any wrestling fans out there, could be The Rock based in the 1980s. He loves a catchphrase. I mean, he even calls him the People's Champ at one moment. Like, he very much does lean into the wrestlingness of the showmanship that you get within the boxing, and he feels like he could be one of the first people within the boxing world to really run with the larger than life personality, which I do think a lot, especially in the MMA world and the boxing world now. It is as much about your personality as it is about your in-ring skills. And I feel like Clubber Lang, Mr. T, really is a flag bearer of that world. And plus, as I said, like the Rocky series is a fantastic one, but for me, number 3 is my absolute favourite, and it's in this list because I think it's the one I have seen more than any others, so it is my favourite film. It's probably not the best, but it is certainly my favourite.
Yeah, it was my honourable mention of, again, exactly what you said. It's the best Rocky film. Not counting the Creed one if you want, but the core Rocky films, even number 6, 3 is by far and away the best one. And weird fun fact, remember them little puppets that you used to get, like hand puppets, and you used to be able to control them when you make their arms move with your fingers.
Yeah.
And I had a Mr. T Clubber Lang, one of them.
Superb. Have you still got it?
I might have it somewhere.
You'll have to try and dig it out.
He had a T-shirt on, obviously, because you can't you can't be fisting Mr. T, can you? You don't want to be doing that. So you're saying you just pull your little fingers one and the other, and his little arms went out but it punched like that. It was like a little T-Rex. It was stupid. I mean, I got it from Blackpool from an Illuminations visit. But yeah, Rocky 3 is superb, undeniably the best one.
Excellent, Matt. You've got to like it. Bit of Thunder Lips.
In the flesh, baby. It's brilliant. Rocky 3 is a great one. It's interesting because, I think Rocky 2 was out in 79 and this was 82, but it's a short period of time in the grand course of the century or what have you, but because it goes back to the start and he's got to find the eye of the tiger again, even though it doesn't feel like that long. It feels like when you speak about it now, and it feels like too soon, but it was perfect at the time. Like, I know people talk about the Rocky films as boxing films, but there's real arcing stories in the characters within, and they all have really good motives for the reasons that they do the things that they do. And for him to go back and try and reclaim the fire that he once lost, he's a tale as old as time. But then you mix that in with like a really homoerotic scene, like them running on the beach and then jumping up in those tiny crop tops to claim balance back to the force between what is like something that could potentially win an Oscar and something that would be on a softcore gay channel. So it's perfectly weighted and balanced is that film.
Super. Matt, your number 5, please.
So my number 5. Now I want to precursor this by, I mentioned it about 5 minutes ago, that this isn't my list of what I think is from a the Screen Actors Guild point of view or from a quality point of view. It's just my personal favourite, and because it's sport should be something that takes you out of, should take you away from your problems, or it should be something that you enjoy that can make you forget about the what's going on in your personal life. So these might not all be serious films, but they're a favourite to me. So, and once I've got that out of the way, I can tell you that my number 5 is Talladega Nights: The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I love this film. I really do. One of the things that I like the most about it is the Americans' representation of what they think about F1 and Sacha Baron Cohen's character, and the outtakes on this film are as good as the script itself, and the ad-libbing is really good, and it's just the sheer ludicrousness of this scenario is just brilliant, and it's silly fun bollocks, and I get that, and it's absolutely fine, but put Will Ferrell and Sacha Baron Cohen together, and it's magic. It's just always going to be magic. I really, really like it, and there is an argument: is motorsport a actual sport? We can debate that another day, I suppose. But I suppose anything that you've got to do something to your body to make you better, I suppose, makes it a sport, I guess. But yeah, I mean, this is a really great film, and if it wasn't for, I know that you guys like the basketball one, I think, a bit more. I think you've said in the past, or the ice skating one. I think Dolan was like a mad Dolan. He loves the ice skating one or something. But yeah, Talladega Nights is one of my favourite Will Ferrell films. Full stop.
I'm not a lover of Will Ferrell films. Sacha Baron Cohen for me does definitely steal that movie, though. I love him. I think he's always very funny, and for me, he's the highlight of that movie. So yeah, I can't argue with it. I wasn't a big fan of Semi-Pro, isn't it? It was the basketball one. Yeah. I did like Blades of Glory. I think I preferred that.
That's it, Blades of Glory.
John Hedder's superb in that movie.
Quick sidebar: have you seen the trailer for what's it called? The Will Ferrell Christmas film with Ryan Reynolds.
I have not.
Looks terrible. Honestly, it looks awful. So me and Sam Spirited. That's it. We watched a few trailers last night, a Christmas thing, and even the Santa Claus's episodical show looked way better than this. Wasn't impressed, sadly.
Yeah, but it could go down the Netflix Ryan Reynolds kind of, you don't know until you watch it kind of thing, that we never expected certain other ones with The Rock to be as good as it was, and that turned out to be amazing. Well, fun, amazing. But this, I think this is going to go one of two ways, and he's going to get really, really mad, or he'll actually enjoy himself. I'm guessing he's going to get really, really mad.
I'm just not going to watch it, to be honest. Stu, you're up next, please.
Well, you can't talk about sports film without sweeping the leg, can you? And Karate Kid was just one of them that I've probably seen it more than I really should have done, considering its actual quality. Like when you go back and watch it now, and I haven't watched any of Cobra Kai, which I know is a disgrace. But it was the whole thing of, is this nostalgia for the sake of it? Clearly doesn't seem to be the amount of people who love it, and that it just hasn't been cancelled, which I expected it to be as well. But yeah, it's just everything about Karate Kid. I mean, kind of spoiler for a future top 5, it'll be a coming of age films. This could be in there as well, quite easily. And you have the whole the wash on, wash off, and the painting the fence, and they're not really quotes. They're like moments in time that you just don't forget. And him teaching a young, vulnerable boy how to kind of stick up for himself and grow as a person rather than just a karate kid. It's, again, like Rocky 3 and like a lot of the Rocky films, it's got more heart than it actually seems on the outside looking in. And you've got a classic 80s villain in it, so what more do you want? And I think even now, I mean, obviously this is the original, not the stupid remake. But you show this to someone now, you get over the kind of the time lapse stuff of, obviously it's been nearly 30 odd years old. It still really works, and it's not cheesy, really, in any way. It's a really good, it's a really well made film, and it deserves to be on here. And again, is karate a sport? Of course it is.
Yeah, I do love the Karate Kid series. I think the second one's my personal favourite, where they go back to Okinawa, when they go to Japan. And it's got Peter Cetera, The Power of Love. That's the soundtrack. Like, it's fucking superb. Great series. And it is something which does have legs, even though you say like the remake was a bit shit. Obviously, it's still in the zeitgeist. It's still in the consciousness that they even tried to remake it all these years later.
Mm.
Matt, fan of Karate Kid?
Not really. Yeah, it's okay. It's Sam loves Cobra Kai, and like she like very rarely, when on Netflix it will say new series XYZ of November. Whatever. She was like on it the second it got released and watched it. She really really enjoyed it. They're fine. I think at the time when I would have watched Karate Kid, it was like terrible parenting aside, but I'd already seen like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter by that point, so Karate Kid kind of paled in comparison to those, I think, which is why it didn't really have the impact on me when I saw it like the first time way back when.
Yeah, makes sense. My number 4 is The Longest Yard, which kind of surprised me to have in that, and it's the remake of The Longest Yard. Like, the original's fine, to be perfectly honest. We've said on this podcast that none of us particularly care much for Adam Sandler's comedy, but this was one that I felt worked really well, mostly because he had a really solid supporting cast. It had quite a few former and current pro wrestlers as they were at the time, which is always going to get a pop out of me, to be perfectly honest. Nelly, as in the dude from Hot in Here, appeared in this film and was actually like quite watchable. Chris Rock was in there. I'm a big fan of Chris Rock's work, so it was like the whole cast just had something about it. There was a film that we looked at on our other podcast when we looked at Mean Machine, the Vinnie Jones movie, which is basically the same film, except for it's about football as we know it, soccer to the Americans. And that film does not work at all. It's an absolutely fucking terrible film. Like, I remember enjoying it when I watched it, but when we watched it back for the podcast that we did on it, it had aged so horrifically. It was awful. And even though it's got quite a good cast, I mean, you've also got the Staith in there who, everyone loves the Staith, and it doesn't work. But when we did that podcast, I also watched both versions of The Longest Yard, the original and the Adam Sandler remake. And the remake was far and away the best one. I really enjoyed myself watching it, found myself laughing several times. And I don't generally revisit comedies, especially that sort of comedy. But I have watched that far too many times for it to not be in my list. So yeah, The Longest Yard. Matt, you're up next, please.
So going, I didn't think we'd have a double Sandler here. Much less the same sport, except I've gone for The Waterboy. So it's by no means a good film. Let's put it out there now. But it is a hilarious film, and it is a guilty pleasure now because it's obviously massively exploitative of someone that's like, mentally ill. However, it's just fucking hilarious, and it's in the public eye once again at the moment because Big Show Paul Wright dressed as Captain Insano this week in wrestling for the first time in 20-something years. It's just a really great Sunday afternoon hungover sports comedy that just hits the right notes, doesn't challenge you in any way, but it has some laugh out loud slapstick comedy. It has a touch of heart about it, and it has like quotable one-liners, and that's just exactly what you need in a throwaway schlocky comedy, and it has that in abundance. It's brilliant. I really love it, and like if you've not seen it, because it hasn't like reached cult status, so people probably haven't even heard of it. You owe yourself a watch because you will laugh at it. You might not see it again, you might not talk about it to anybody else, but for that 90 minutes, you will laugh. Yeah,
absolutely. As you just mentioned about Big Show, or Paul White as he is in AEW currently, dressing back up as Captain Insano, and they even replayed that whole scene from the movie. It was great to see. Like, it did bring back some wonderful nostalgia. You are right, though. I mean, I didn't expect Adam Sandler to appear in any top 5 that we ever did, apart from maybe Uncut Gems. But, he's got 2 mentions, and he could quite easily get a third at some point with another one of his movies. So yeah.
Are you saying we're never going to do a top 5 Adam Sandler?
I think we need to stay away from actor-specific top fives because we just end up with maybe 7 films to discuss. So yeah, but I doubt we would ever get to an Adam Sandler one until we're at like a QuestionCast 1000 maybe. Stu, your number 4, please, sir.
It's probably more relevant than ever at this time. I'm going to just play 4-4-2. Mike Bassett, England manager, which again we reviewed on for Filmcast on the Wolves Fancast. Apparently, you can still go and find it. It's still, when I tried, I couldn't find it anywhere since we moved channels. But watching it last year or the year before, it's probably better now than it was when it came out. Like, everything about it is so absurd anyway, but you still have these people around football, and probably because we're older and we've experienced it for ourselves with Super Mick and whatever, that obviously writing players' names on the back of a fag packet and calling them up from the 3rd division doesn't happen, but the rise of the proper football man and the firefighters and that kind of thing, these people exist still in 2022, even a whole 20 odd years after this film was made, and it's still as funny now as it was back then, maybe even more so in parts. And it's, in one sense, it's like a time capsule of that late 90s era with England.
Mm-hmm.
But then after watch the Italian 90 documentary on Channel 4, there's a lot of that stuff still going on in this, and that was 10 years after that had happened. So you look at some of the people in Qatar at the minute, especially doing punditry. If Mike Bassett was a real person, you could quite easily see him on beIN Sports with Richard and Andy talking bollocks. So I think, as football comedies go, I mean, football films in general, as we've discovered, are quite shit most of the time. This going down the route that it does just makes it seem more real. And the more real these things are played for, the better they are for me. So, yeah, number 4 favourite sports film is Mike Bassett, England manager.
The thing that I think works about Mike Bassett is because, like an Olympic, like the late 90s is now the new retro. And when things become retro, they come back in fashion again. So obviously, like retro England shirts and everything like that. So this is like gone full circle now, and he's back to being. It's now like cool again. Everything comes around. History repeats itself. So you what like exactly like you said, like the Italian 90 documentary is in people's vision at the moment because of that Channel 4 documentary and the World Cup, etc. So this film is like, I genuinely think Ricky Tomlinson has had a bum deal in public opinion because he's not like, I think he's a really good comedic actor that I don't think ever, maybe, I don't know, I don't think he's never had that huge role outside of this film and the royal family that anybody really would, herald him as an amazing actor. But he gives it all. He gives it his all in the royal family as well. Like he plays someone that's in one scene massively unlikable, but then a massively lovingly father in another, and does it in a script that is intentionally meant to be dour and vague and like inane, as British families are. And he still manages to pull those emotions out of the bag. And I don't think he gets a lot of acting chops that he deserves, Ricky Tomlinson.
No, I think he seems to have questionable views, I think is the PC way of putting it. And I think Ricky Tomlinson, the person, takes away from Ricky Tomlinson, the actor. So you are right. I mean, the royal family, he's a tour de force in that. Like he genuinely does dominate every single scene that he's in. It's all about him because he does put in a hell of a performance, and he doesn't get the credit for it because people associate the actor with the character, and most people don't like the actor. I think is possibly why that is. But as for Mike Bassett, when we reviewed it, I went in with very, very low hopes. I remember enjoying it when it was released in 2000 or whenever it was. I enjoyed it then, but then when we watched it back like 19 years later or whenever, I thought this is not going to have held up. But as a snapshot of the time that it was set. It's a perfect representation of what it was to be a football fan at that period of time, where we had the best team in the world, but they were always shit and they always let us down. So yeah, it was perfect for what it was. It's a really good movie. Right, so my number 3 is a sport which I don't really know hardly anything about, but I thought this film was fantastic, and it is I, Tonya, which is about the Tonya Harding ice skating scandal where she broke Nancy Kerrigan's ankle, or maybe she didn't and it was somebody else. You never really get to the bottom of the story. Similar to Mike Bassett, it's done in a sort of faux documentary way. So they interview characters whilst also putting in scenes that are going on within the real world. They managed to marry it up really well. So it's actually a very, very well shot film. It never sort of... It takes some comedic leaps, but without ever going so far as to mocking what was actually going on in the real world at that time. It's an absolutely superb piece of work that I think was Oscar nominated for Best Screenplay, and Alison Janney, I think, may have even won the Best Supporting Actress gong at that year's awards. It was just a phenomenal movie about a sport I have got zero shits to give. It was brilliant, and like Margot Robbie is... I mean, she's just gone from strength to strength throughout her acting career. Prior to this, she was in The Wolf of Wall Street, which is a great film, but she's probably the least known actor, and there are such big performances within that movie that she doesn't stand out other than being absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. But within I, Tonya, the film is pinned all around her. She is the I, Tonya of it all, and she holds it all together with aplomb, from being this woman who is abused and downtrodden, but she's also a bit evil, a bit of an arsehole, and she manages to marry the two sides of the character perfectly. It's such a great film, and for some reason I've watched this film almost every year since it's been released, and I don't particularly know why, other than it's just really, really well acted. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, see, timeline-wise, this probably won't fit, but I remember this being the first like Margot Robbie film where she's, rightly or wrongly, she's not there to be sexualized. She's not there because she's drop dead gorgeous. She's there as an actor. You know, obviously you had Wolf on Wall Street, Suicide Squad, the shit one, and the not shit one. Birds of Prey, not so much. Even her appearance in The Big Short was there, her naked in the bath. Focus with Will Smith. Do you know what I mean? All of these films, she's there because she's not because she's gorgeous, but she's playing that role. Because whereas this is her acting chops, and actually she's a damn fine actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she gets to show that in this, which is great because, you know, I don't think it would be fair that just because, you know, she's attractive, that should limit her role potential, because actually that's not what I'm sure she went into acting to do in the first place.
And I don't know if this was the first film of it, but this felt like it was the first film where it was pinned on her as a human being. It felt like she went out and she was, I don't know if she was the producer on this, but she was doing all of the producer's work. So she was going out talking about what this film means, why she wanted the role. And it was a lot more than just Margot Robbie, the actor. It was Margot Robbie, the everything. Because she's become something of a jack of all trades. She has become this producer. She's done rewrites on some of the films that she's done. I believe that I don't know if she has done directing, but I think she has got some directing work in the pipeline. She's become something of a Renaissance woman now. She can do it all. And this feels like this was the first film of hers where we got to see that. So it feels like it was a moment in time for Margot Robbie.
Agreed.
Matt, your number 3, please.
So we're slowly moving into the realms of favourite and good films now. Not that surprisingly, IMDb would tell you, which so when I looked into it, shocked me that it was only a 7.9, but Rotten Tomatoes has it as a 98%, and that is The Wrestler. Mentioned The Wrestler before, did my dissertation on The Wrestler. I can't remember the exact title of my dissertation, but it was Discuss Masculinity, as a concept within the wrestler. And basically, the thing about masculinity in Bond is that he's weak when he's hurt, but in wrestling, you're seen as stronger when you're hurt and bleeding, and being cut and everything else is actually a source of pride and strength, and how that differs within film. But made those parallels in my dissertation. The Wrestler's a really great film, and it was funny because it was the ballad of Mickey Rourke in many ways, like an aging person that once was in their prime has now got to come to terms with the fact that they are no longer in their prime and has to still live some form of life. Can they do it? Obviously, he's had loads of battles with addiction in the past himself, Mickey Rourke, and he had this renaissance through this film in Iron Man 2, was it, when he was Whiplash, or whatever his name was? But then has kind of gone off the rails again since. It's a very bittersweet film about really wanting to see someone succeed, and you don't get. It's a cruel lesson, this film, in that you don't always get what you want as a viewer in terms of what you hope the character achieves or doesn't achieve, etc. And then as a wrestling fan, and bring in the stuff that it's got Ring of Honor in, and it's got wrestling cameos, that just elevates it to another level. I think this was probably his only, I don't know if it was Oscar nominated, but Golden Globe nominated for Mickey Rourke as well, and it really put him back in the public eye for a new generation of film goers as well. It's a really excellent film, and you don't need to be into wrestling to enjoy the story of coming to terms with age and your life and what you've achieved or haven't achieved, and how you deal with that. That is a story that doesn't get lost just because it's about wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. The sport is the train that carries the film, but the actual important stuff is inside it, isn't it? That's, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you may correct me on this, Matt. It feels very much like it's the story of Jake the Snake Roberts, probably someone that I would imagine even non-wrestling fans probably are aware of. Jake the Snake. He's a very, very popular figure throughout wrestling history, especially during the boom periods of the 80s and 90s. Which would lead me to also recommending, if anyone is vaguely interested in watching, is it Beyond the Match, which starts the Jake downfall and then the resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts, where it's more about him coming back up.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. Stu, you're less of a wrestling fan. Have you seen The Wrestler? Is this on your radar at all?
Yeah, it was one of the. Funnily enough, I watched it when I was kind of that 18-month dalliance, when I kind of got back into it for a little bit. But again, I watched it with someone who hates wrestling and thinks it's silly. But again, she enjoyed it for the film that it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Like you were just talking about, Tonya, it doesn't matter that it's a film about that. And there's a lot of things like that. Even like you could probably say like the Wrexham, Welcome to Wrexham documentary. You don't need to know anything about football, really. It's about the people. And that's what The Wrestler was for me. And him looking the way he does is a help for a change rather than a hindrance.
Yeah, it is.
And you can kind of see the trauma that he's been through. And I mean, the farce of Iron Man 2 is... I mean, Bonesaw in the first Spider-Man is better than his performance in that, and that's obviously just a cameo. But The Wrestler deserves all the plaudits, and probably more than it hasn't got for being the film that it is, and it just gets kind of done batted aside because it's a air quotes wrestling film when it's really nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think that Mickey Rourke was the perfect person, as Matt so eloquently detailed. I don't think there's anyone else they could have put in that role who couldn't bring their own real life troubles and battles anywhere near as well as Mickey Rourke. And I think it's kind of shown because he's never really found a role since that movie. He's kind of gone back to being in the shadows a bit like he was before that movie. He's never quite found his niche again with it. The only reason he's not on my list is I've only seen that film once. And all of these, I've seen each one of these films at least 4 times. So that's the only reason it doesn't make it onto my list. It's just that it's a great movie. It's probably not my favourite. Well, it's definitely not my favourite wrestling movie. I think it's the only reason. But yeah, wonderful movie. Stu, your third, please.
I mean, it goes back to what Matt kind of hinted at, is motorsport a sport. You've got to be in some kind of physical condition to withstand the G-forces on your body. Normal people couldn't get in any kind of car and do what they do. So from that aspect, it's a sport. And Le Mans 66 / Ford versus Ferrari, depending on what part of the world you're in. Again, just a really good story, a factual story about someone's drive to beat someone else just because they can. And for no other reason other than that, really. And being a massive F1 fan that I am, and obviously this is not F1 really, but Ferrari ruling motorsport in the early days and being challenged by Ford, and it's just, well, I don't need to say anything about it, do I? Because the fact that you like it, Andy, says everything about it for itself, and superb performances all round as well. If you don't know anything about the story, don't look it up. Just go in blind and just think this is a film about getting one over on someone else.
Where does this film, Stu, rank compared to Rush? Because Rush nearly made my list, but then didn't. And how does this compare? It's obviously going to be 2 completely different subjects, but, you know, I thought Rush was a phenomenal film. Is this better than Rush?
I had the same thing. I mean, Rush was one of my honourable mentions. I think, in a way, it's ruined for me because obviously I knew Rush. I knew the story behind that. So the Niki Lauda stuff and what happened to him and what happened to James Hunt later on. I already knew that. So going into this one was more of I was more in the dark about it. You can't really split them. If you like one, you'll like the other. I went with this just purely for the fact that I think it's a better... I liked it more because I didn't know as much as I did about Rush. If it was a best film, you could argue you could just switch them out, indistinguishable of each other. That really, they both deserve to be on here, but my 1 and 2... I like more. But yeah, if you like Rush or if you like this, watch the other one.
Fair.
Yeah, I think as you pointed out, Stu, the fact that I like this film, I've got no interest really in F1 or most racing stuff. I just don't find it that interesting. The only reason I watched it is because it was Oscar nominated that year, and as you know, I try to watch all of the films. So all I knew was it was a 2.5-hour film about cars going fast, and it wasn't Fast and Furious. So I thought I'm not going to enjoy this, and from the first minute to the last I was just gripped with it. I remember texting you within the first half of the movie like, oh, this is actually a special movie, this is brilliant. It's James Mangold, who obviously we know from Logan, so you know the type of performance that he can pull out of, you know, decent actors, and Matt Damon and Christian Bale both on-sung to perfection almost within this movie. It's absolutely superb. Much like The Wrestler, the only reason it's not on my list is because I've only seen it once, because I don't feel like it's the type of film that I want to keep revisiting. It's a moment in time that was just a wonderful movie. So that's why it's there for me. My second one is my wrestling film, and it is Fighting With My Family.
Oh.
Loved it. I mean, we've spoke about it a few times on this podcast. I love Florence Pugh. She can do no wrong in my eyes. Like, I genuinely feel she's the modern day superstar actor. You see her walk into any red carpet event, and all eyes seem to be on her. She can hold the audience whenever she talks. There's just something about her that is very old school feeling when it comes to acting. And this is a very young performance by her. I feel it's quite early doors. I think she'd only done Lady Macbeth at this point. But she doesn't feel like there's a naivety to the character, but not a naivety to Florence Pugh, if that makes sense. I feel like she manages to bring her youth to the role without making her come across as weak. And it's the story of Soraya slash Paige, depending on how you may know her in her walk of life, from going from being what's effectively member of a Carney family in Norwich to the huge stage of being at the first WrestleMania, sorry, the first Raw after WrestleMania, winning the title in front of a crowd of people who may not know who she is, but being accepted and being loved, which isn't always an easy thing to do, especially in the wrestling world, especially in WWE, in a Vince McMahon world, when you're not a blonde-haired, massive-breasted woman, which is not what Paige was at all. She was the antithesis of that type of wrestler, and she still managed to be one of the most beloved. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I choked up when she made her return to the ring last night in our world, after a 5-year absence due to an absolutely horrendous injury. So, I mean, as personal view, it was very much a nice tail end to what we had established in this film. And this film came at a really difficult point in the real Paige Soraya's life, battling with addiction and injuries and all these other things. And it was nice to see this other side of her. So I think in terms of representing a real human being, it was fantastic. I absolutely love this movie. We got quite a bit of The Rock. We got Stephen Merchant. We got
Vince
Vaughn, Nick Frost, Lena Headey. Like, it's just brilliant. Like, it's got some of the best of the English that I love. It's got Dwayne in there, which we've obviously discussed that ad nauseum on this podcast as well. So, Fighting My Family, wonderful movie.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, films, Paige, Soraya, I've seen other films of her that have got me in a way that I've had to reach for the tissues. I mean, that aside, it is a great story, and it's one that I think was covered really well, and acting wise, all the right people seem to be in the right roles. Like, if you look at like Roy Knight and then you look at Nick Frost, it was so well done.
It kissed me almost, yeah.
Yeah, it is a really good film. One I've only seen once, probably need to see again. Especially now she's in the limelight again for her return. It's been a weird year or two in the wrestling world with these wrestlers coming back from like horrific neck and spinal injuries that I wince when I see Edge and now her wrestle, and Steve Austin wrestle, because I'm like, you're one fucking bad move away from being a vegetable. Like, I find it awkward. I find it difficult and uncomfortable to watch sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but whenever I watch any Japanese wrestling, they seem to hate their bodies, the Japanese wrestlers, because they just do these moves that I've seen people have to retire from, and it's tough to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Yeah. Matt, your second choice, please.
Now, this is really tough because I've gone for soccer. I've gone for football, and there's so much out there that I could have picked, some that have made my honourable mentions, and I feel like I've almost cheated in going for an out-and-out documentary, but I've gone for Asif Kapadia's Maradona documentary. Nearly said Madonna there. Maradona's documentary. Watched it only 2-3 days ago, again for probably the 4th or 5th time, and a documentary that probably has about 5% English narration, and the rest of it is either in Italian or in Portuguese or Argentinian, whatever they speak over there.
Spanish.
Ignorance, they're Spanish. And it's really just a bittersweet story about what I would argue is the greatest footballer that ever played the game. who we spoke about the other day, could easily play in this generation's game as well because of his technical ability, and someone that was killed by not only his addiction, obviously, everybody knows that, but he was so famous it killed him. And you see throughout the course of this like 2-hour documentary a man's soul leave his body due to fame and the pressures of fame and the pressures of being an icon, and that it's just not everything. Like it's not worth what it did to him. You know, obviously he was gripped by his addiction, and he was in with the Camorra of Naples, but he was bigger than he was to the Italians as well, which, you know, rightly or wrongly, they're so religious and everything else. He was put at the pedestal the same as God. Do you know what I mean? He was in Naples because they were a country that they were a part of the southern Italy that was seen as the toilet of Italy, and they were seen as, you know, their words, they were the blacks of Italy, according to the people in Turin and Milan and everything else. He represented them and made them worthy of being part of Italy. He was just a god, and it was unbelievable. Like, we just know Maradona in the public eye as just a coke fiend that was amazing at football. But then you watch this documentary that's so well done, and they got access to so many people around him that it just shows you the human story of it, and it's just so sad. And I know I've said sports should take you away from like your misery, but like it was just awful what happened to him. And this documentary just puts it across in a way that really gives you sympathy for somebody who, if you listen to Peter Shilton, you think was the devil incarnate, and he wasn't. Like, don't get me wrong, he was a shithouse, cheating, horrible, whatever, but he was a human as well, and I think, you know, this documentary is a good way of showing you that side of him as well.
Asif Kapadia, the director, he's done 3 films which have been specifically about 3 documentaries about a specific person. He did Maradona, which you've just mentioned. He did Senna, but the one that stands out to me personally is very, very similar to the Maradona one in the Amy Winehouse documentary. Another person whose fame killed her. Let's be honest, that's how she died. She battled with addiction and everything, but that addiction came as a result of the fame and everything that came with it. And it's just very interesting how he's managed to get 2 films about 2 people who you would imagine would be so different, but he manages to find the core, and they're actually quite depressingly similar. Asif Kapadia, yeah, three documentaries about those 3, and they're all 3 very, very good documentaries.
Yeah, Senna, I mean, is heralded as like a work of art that should belong in the Louvre. Like, it's, people really love that as well, and I'd be keen to see where he goes next, because, you know, he's not someone that pumps something out every year to tick a quota. Like, you know, I think he's from what I understand, I heard him on TalkSport a couple of months ago. You know, he very much picks a project, puts everything into it, and then creates something special. It's not there to, you know, for a quick cash grab.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just looked on his IMDb page to find out what he's directing next, and there's nothing in the pipeline, or there's nothing announced in the pipeline, so he's probably in the depths of figuring out where he's going, which not enough directors do that and seem to live their lives on whatever subject they're going for. I think Kapadia seems to be one of a kind, and the world of documentary making is much better for it, I believe.
Yeah, just called Amy, that documentary, which I hadn't seen that one, so that's
brilliant.
next. I didn't, you know, Senna was unlucky to be on, not here. I've said it before how we actually watched that in the cinema, which is rare to watch a documentary in the cinema anyway. And walked back to the pub afterwards. Me and Dean didn't speak to each other the whole time. Just went to the pub, got a drink, sat down, just proper like speechless. Obviously, I remember it happening to me anyway, but just superb, really well made. And the Maradona one, I watched that when I had COVID in 2020. When I was bedridden. my tablet on its arm, and like you said, Matt, considering it is 90% reading, even in that state where I wasn't really useful to do anything at all, I was still gripped by it. And I think that says everything about it. That even when I couldn't breathe properly for 4 whole days, 2 hours of that was spent upright reading off a tiny screen because I was so gripped by it.
Brilliant. Stu, your number 2, please, sir.
I don't think you can get much different, can you?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Follow that, Stu.
Feel the rhyme. Cool Runnings, obviously. And again, I've realised when you go down the list of what I've actually taught about, and it's a lot of taking the piss out of sport, mainly because a lot of it you can't replicate it properly. So when you try, it doesn't work, and it always looks fake. Yeah, this being a true story, and obviously an exaggeration of a true story, and having Lord John Candy in it as well, being excellent. Was this the last one before he died?
I think he did one more after it. He did the Western comedy that the name escapes me. Wagons East?
Yeah, he went, oh,
yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. He was definitely at his biggest when he did this. But again, it's just funny, man. It's just when you say you've watched all these at least 4 times, I've probably watched Cool Runnings at least 10 times.
Yeah, easily.
And it's like every winter. You put it on. Obviously, I could have put Fire, Ice and Dynamite in here, as it's technically a sports film, but people would get mad at me again. And no, don't need that. But in place of that, the other winter film that you have to watch, and it's always on ITV2 anyway, is Cool Runnings. It's just funny, and a Jamaican bobsleigh team. You couldn't make that shit up if you tried. And so the fact that it actually happened, and they did it with such heart and not mocking them in any way. And you've got characters there who, and they're instantly quotable, even now, years and years later. Probably can't talk like Sankey without getting told off again, but you know what I mean. Though it's like these things stick in your head, and it's just so much fun. And if we're going with favourites, yeah, I'll talk about a serious film in Ford versus Ferrari, which is Oscar nominated to Cool Runnings. Yeah, because I love this film, and it just puts a smile on your face, and especially in these times, go and watch Cool Runnings and come away with it not feeling happy about yourself, because you will, and that's what everyone needs right now.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I'm just looking on IMDb at the moment at Cool Runnings. It really surprises me that it's a 7.0. I don't know what I sort of expected it to be 5.6 or something. It's the kind of film that doesn't feel like it should be a classic, but it's the kind of film that everybody seems to actually quite love. There's something about it. I imagine if I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, it would be a case of the critics gave it shit, but the audience loved it. It feels like that kind of movie. I think this may have been the first film I saw at the cinema that was about sport. And as you say, it feels like it's not a real thing. Jamaicans who live in a country that is hot, I imagine, year round, going and doing ice stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. But it's wonderful, and the fact that it is a true story adds this next layer to it. I loved John Candy. I think he may have been one of my favourite actors as a kid. I thought he was brilliant. I've just looked. He did a couple of other films following this one. His last film was actually Canadian Bacon, which was a very small role in the documentary maker who did Fahrenheit 9/11. Michael Moore. That was going to say John Moore for some reason. In one of his satirical films. But I feel like his magnum opus, John Candy's magnum opus, is Cool Runnings. This is the film that I imagine most people of our age will know and love him for more than anything. So we've got some honourable mentions to go in here. The Last Dance I've got on my list. I know it's not a film, but it was as close to documentary perfection in a series. It was absolutely brilliant, and it's much more than sport. It's sport, it's the man, it's the myth, it's the legend. It's about his impact on the world and the world's impact on him. Just absolutely superb documentary making. Eddie the Eagle. I really enjoyed that film. The only reason it didn't make it onto my list is because I've only seen it twice, and as I said, I've seen all of these films more than that, so I can't consider it a favourite just because I haven't seen it as many as the others. But Eddie the Eagle was fun. Eddie the Eagle's a character who has always seemed to be about because he's a loser. And I don't mean that like harsh, but he didn't do very well. He was like the guy in that one Olympics, I can't remember what his name was, but they'd nicknamed him the Turtle because he was a bit of a big guy who did the 100 metres in like about 3 minutes. He's got that reputation to him, and they've really bought his character and everything out about it. He was fantastic in that movie. I really enjoyed Eddie the Eagle. And the last one I wanted to mention is one that we mentioned in our group chat. The one that I think might be the best sporting film is Raging Bull. I think it's a work of art. I think it's absolutely superb. I love Martin Scorsese. This may be the film I've seen more than any other of Scorsese's. It's between that and Goodfellas, probably for the top two slot. I think it's brilliant. And the fact it's this one story that I always come back to with it, which is why I think it's brilliant, is that when Jake LaMotta was watching this film with his ex-wife, he turns to his ex-wife and says, "Was I really that bad?" And her response was, "No, you were worse." So the fact that De Niro managed to bring to life this absolute monster, both in the ring and in his personal life, he managed to bring him to life. And you sort of loved and hated him in equal measures. It was brilliant. The performance of him and Joe Pesci as well. I mean, it's always magic when those two seem to get together on screen. And it was magic when they did it in Raging Bull.
Well, you're selling it to me now. I slagged it off earlier. And I know it's been a long, long time and I probably wasn't old enough to appreciate it properly. But you just made it sound like one of the best films ever made.
I mean, I think it's in the IMDb top 250. It's up there, and it's up there with Scorsese. And as you know, I'm a big fan of Scorsese's work. So I would say give it a revisit if you're on the fence about it. It is brilliant. Matt, honourable mentions.
So The Damned United is up there for football, but Sheen's performance is better than the film, I think.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think his performance is better than the sum of the parts of the film. But it's great. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And if Maradona, if I hadn't have watched that very recently, might have made it on that list anyway. Black Ball, and I've mentioned a couple of times before. What I find interesting about Black Ball is, it's made pittance at the box office, and it's really it's really inconsistently reviewed. But the BBC and the Radio Times hated it, and Empire magazine loved it, and that tells me everything you need to know about those two industries and those two publications, and that it's just a fun slice of the dourness of English and British life, sporting life, and how we get caught up in benign things when it becomes popular. Kind of, it's the story of darts coming out of the working men's club into Sky Sports, but it's lawn bowls, not darts, essentially. And it's a good film that will never see the light of day for most people, and will always be in the bargain bin of like a co-op. When you walk in, there's DVDs in like a £1 little shelf or in a little bucket thing. It's always there, basically.
Yeah, it is great. Touching on The Damned United, it's a very, very good football film. The reason it didn't get a look in on mine, the book is so much better.
Okay.
Like the film is just so different to the book, and that's why it didn't work for me. Like, and you saying that Michael Sheen's performance is better than the film. I think that is where the film loses marks in my book, because it's a very good performance, And I think if it was in the book rather than the film's retelling of it, I think it would be damn near perfection.
Mhm.
So that's why it doesn't quite do it for me, but it's probably the best of the footballing films, personally. Except for maybe Dave Bautista's Final Score, which I expected to be terrible, but fucking love that movie.
God,
Well,
I forgot about that.
yeah. Stu, honourable mentions, mate.
That was just going to be one of them. When you were talking about wrestling earlier, I was thought I'll wait till the end to bring it up. But the bike chase on the roof of Upton Park, legendary. Fever Pitch. I don't think we've ever talked about Fever Pitch, and from a kind of English football fan, I say perspective, but it's obviously based on the book of the same name. It's all right. I watched it with an Arsenal fan, so it was a bit different. And just watching it on my own, I don't know how well it'd hold up now. It's quite old, but it seemed to capture the feels of being in that kind of environment pretty well. If we're talking about documentaries, the FIFA Uncovered one on Netflix last week, or the week before, just fucking outrageous. It's just shockingly bad how they got away with so much for so long. They're all criminals. Some of them have amazingly avoided jail and are still wandering around. And it's like, it's one of them things where you watch it and you can't believe what you're watching because it's so bad. And the ethics, like we talked about Aaron a bit ago, about the whole World Cup and why it's there and whatever. You watch this and it being in Qatar is not even the worst part about the whole story. It's incredible. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. But again, thinking at 4 hours, I think you said it, Andy, how can they make it into 4 hours?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they could have really cut much out, really, in how they make it, how they do it. I think it's pretty well done. Rush, we mentioned earlier, could have been easily gone on here. Dodgeball as well. I thought that had been mentioned when we were talking about.
Yeah, of course. I'd completely forgot about that one, actually, to be fair.
Okay.
Yeah, because we used to play dodgeball when it was raining at school.
Mm.
That was the PE equivalent of, it's inside dodgeball time. And then obviously health and safety took it away from us. And shockingly, again, I mentioned Fred and Sander in Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, that nearly made it on my list as well. There's something about golf where it just doesn't seem to have translated to the big screen. But for some reason, Happy Gilmore is far and away the best thing that's ever happened to golf. It's brilliant. The one film I'm amazed that none of us have mentioned that I've just remembered, A Shot at Glory. the Ali McCoy classic.
Oh.
Like, Ali McCoy should not be an actor at all, but he was really good. Even he played a Celtic player, and you believed him. So that's how good he was.
And he out-acted Michael Keaton.
It was brilliant. I mean, yeah, you've got Keaton was in there, Brian Cox was in there, so some big name actors, and he held his own with aplomb. Brilliant movie. Right, to our number ones. This is the only duplicate on the list, so I'm going to jump across mine. Matt, what's your number one, please?
So I thought this was, when you said that I didn't need to worry about the clash, I thought this was because of a technicality, because mine is Rocky 2. Now, mine is Rocky 2 because you've got the human story, but you also get the, he wins the big one and he becomes champion, and you get, yo, Adrian, I did it, and all of that. But in there, you get the story of Apollo Creed, his pride taking over, when all that the fight with Rocky should have been was this exhibition, and that's all it should have been. But a man's pride takes over, and he lets that get the better of him, and he lets Rocky have another go. Then you get all the stuff about Rocky being the ultimate underdog because he needs this surgery, and he gets called out. You get all the stuff about Adrian being pregnant, and you get the stuff about Mickey not wanting to be his coach, and there's all these arcing storylines that makes Rocky 2 arguably it should never have been a good film. Like, they get worse as they go on. These Rocky films, from a storytelling and an actual from a filmmaking, I drink hipster coffee and have a beard scale, it goes downwards, and from enjoying it as a popcorn film, they go up until you get to 5, and then it just comes completely downhill. I just think this is the clock. Like, Rocky almost should have ended at Rocky 2, in my opinion, in that it was the ultimate story and arc, and then he becomes a champion, and then that was it. Like, it didn't need to go any further. I'm glad that it did, but I think Rocky 2 over Rocky 1, because you're already in love with this character, and they managed to tell some really good emotional human stories in the second one, as opposed to the first, where we're learning about his character, learning his motives and his why he does the things he does. And I just think this is an excellent filmmaker's film, whereas, you know, they really play on in 4 that people know it's now shit. 3 wasn't shit at all. I really liked it for the reasons I said earlier, but like, Rocky 2 is a better film. Rocky 3 is a better movie.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Rocky 2 is good. Like, I think 1 is the best film, you know, as far as you go in terms of cinematography, writing, all the wanky stuff that you associate with film rather than movies. But the second one, it has that feel good factor, which, as much as I enjoy being a cynical bastard, you can't beat going away from a cinema smiling. And it does give you that. Whereas 1, you're happy, but very much within the remit of seeing a man lose. You're happy. Like, whereas this one, yeah, he wins the big one, and it's a great experience at the end of it. And there are some culminations to storylines which are really nice to see. It's a great choice.
Rocky Balboa 6 has no right to be as good as it is. I think it's just about is on the nostalgia scale of sickly sweet with nostalgia, but it has no right being as good as it is. And the third Creed film that's coming up, I watched a trailer the other day, and it's like, where do you take Creed now? Because you had the first Creed introducing the character, you had the second Creed, which was all Rocky, which was basically Rocky 4, and then this is like, where do you go with that character now? But they've put a really interesting little twist on what this story is going to be about. And then it links it back to Rocky 2, about pride, about family, about dealing with fame, and what that can cost you in the long run. So I think that, like, the Creed films have been a revelation. They've been really good. I'm really looking forward to Creed 3.
It's one that's been on my list forever, but I just, for whatever reason, I'm never in the mood for it, and I don't know why. The third one, I don't know why, but it just gives me Fast and Furious vibes. I don't know what it is. It might just be about the colour palettes and stuff like that. It looks very Fast and Furious-esque, which obviously is a reason why I know I will like these films when I eventually get around to them. Yeah. So as I said, there's only one film on all of our lists which has been a duplication. Stu, would you like to tell the people what our favourite sports film is?
I can't believe it's number 1. it's a duplicate. I mean, let's just sell it to the people. I mean, you look at this cast. I mean, 90s pin-up Yasmin Bleeth, Jenny McCarthy, Robert Vaughn from Man from U.N.C.L.E. himself. Matt is looking with absolute bemusement here. Bob Costas, who you probably won't make anything to you. Robert Stack from the Mystery Show. It's basketball. What else could it be? It's the ultimate sports film.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
And you look at it again. You look at it now. I mean, this was like what the very early days of South Park when this came out in '98. South Park had been out a year, I think. And then you get 2 people out of nowhere, and the other guy who had to look up his name, Dean Basher,
Squeak.
Yeah. Who around that time he was with he did everything with them. Like the silly cannibal musical thing, he was in that as well, and Alfred Packer, and he. But you look at Matt Stone and Trey Parker in this, and yeah, you meld together basketball and baseball because all the other big sports have gone too corporate and there's no soul left in them. And then you look at a fucking World Cup in Qatar, and again, harking back to the FIFA documentary, which the Coca-Cola link up with FIFA was a way of getting money in for the greater good, so they could expand the game in poorer regions, and obviously, money leads to greed, leads to badness. It happens in basketball where they sell their idea and they can see how it's getting out of control. I think this is a stupid film that's 6.5 on IMDb, yet it's probably got more of a moral say-so now than it did in 1998, plus the fact it's absolutely genius and hilarious. And I don't know anyone who's ever seen this film who hates it, because it's not possible.
No. I remember when the film was released, and every sort of 5 or 6 years a movie gets released and it's the worst movie of all time. It's never the worst movie. It's usually bad but not dreadful. Like, I remember the All Saints movie, Honest. I remember that being the worst film ever made, and it was just a bit crap. And when Basketball was released, it was the worst movie that had been made up until this point in 1998. But it is hilarious. Like, it is genuinely laugh out loud funny in parts. Some of the most obscene and obscure random bullshit that comes up. The dude whose name that you butchered and I'm not even going to try and pronounce because I'll do just as bad a job. He just gets bullied throughout this whole fucking film. You should feel sorry for him, but you hate him as well because he's a little bitch, which is the nickname that they give him throughout this movie. It's very funny. It's got 90s stalwarts, as you said, Yasmin Bleeth, Jenny McCarthy. It shouldn't hold up at all. This should have been consigned to the dustbin of history within 6 months of it being released. But somehow it had legs because it does lean in very much to that South Park kind of humour, which I do understand is a very objective kind of humour. Subjective kind of humour. Not everyone is going to like it. I do appreciate that. But I think if you like it, you will love this. It's the kind of humour which there is a storyline to it. There is a moral centre. As you said, Stu, the fact that we're in this corporate hell of a FIFA World Cup, and this is sort of like the seeds of it were sown in 1998 in a film, which is where they married up baseball and basketball to create a new sport. It's absurdity. But depressingly, this absurdity seems to have come true. And has probably always had like a seed of it. Obviously, being American sports fans, we've seen teams who move from one side of the country to the other because there's a little bit more money available if you move from Utah to St. Louis, for example, and then move back again 6 months later because there's tax breaks if you move back, that kind of nonsense. And this movie plays on that to perfection. It knows more about sports than it really should. It tells you a truth that you don't quite realise you're going to see.
Mm.
I'm guessing, Matt, you've never even heard of this, let alone seen it.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it. Sounds like I'd remember it if I had. I know of it, but for some reason, I think when I think of this film, I always think of Chasing Amy. Is it in that time period? I know it's nothing to do with each other, but it's just that time period of like Dogma, this Chasing Amy and Clerks, all kind of like roll into one set of films that I wasn't old enough to know existed at the time.
I think that's fair. It's that sort of mid to late 90s American humour that took over the world and then vanished quite quickly. Like, comedy seemed to evolve quite quickly out of that, I feel. But
throw High Fidelity in there as well.
Oh, I love High Fidelity. But it's that. There's a proper 90s-ness to it when you watch it. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing personally, but as I said, it's very to the individual, I think.
But watching it now, it'd be fascinating actually. Watching it now with no background in it. I'm guessing not even seeing a trailer. and maybe it's like a kind of Xanadu kind of thing, where it's better now because you've never seen it before and you've got modern, older eyes, and
Yeah.
Could be.
that's an interesting experiment. This will be. You need to do it now.
You need to report back to us, Matt. Yeah. Right, okay, that's us done for another week. Next week, rather than a picture pod, it's going to be the first week of December. So what we're going to do for the next couple of weeks is we're going to give you a watch guide of Christmas-based films that you can watch for the next 7 days. And we'll give you a bit of a rundown up until Christmas. It'll be 3 films a week, just to give you a bit of options on your Christmas viewing. We'll let you know a bit more about it when we get there next week. Please make sure you're subscribed onto whatever podcast that you're listening to us on right now so that you don't miss an episode. And make sure that you're subscribed on all of the socials. We're at Cage Fighting Pod. Also, if you've got any emails, send them our way to cagefightingpod@gmail.com. So for this week, Matthew, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, everybody. Look after yourselves. Check in on your pals. Have a great week. And enjoy the festival of football that is the World Cup.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Justice for Footix. Goodbye.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.